Fists were always too fast to dodge growing up. Granted, though they always threw the first punch, I was always the first to say something. Had this horrible habit of treating people who were bigger and stronger than me like they weren't. Which wouldn't have been such an issue if I wasn't 5 feet tall. They thought I was self-absorbed and conceited. To their credit, they were also absolutely correct, which meant if I were to make a sly comment, which was another of my unfortunate suicidal habits, I get beaten up. I'd always try running away, but if someone is bigger and stronger than you, they can also outrun you. For the first decade of my life, I could barely fight. Always was last in the races. Never got picked for sparring, and never, ever won a fair fight. Which would surprise all of you, if I hazard to guess, because I'm also human. As in human. Human. Growing up, I never knew why. Honestly, I didn't think about aliens much. Spent most of my time trying to find a way to be less helpless. Then, a bit later, I moved here. To the planet my parents fought with the rebels to overthrow the evil queen. And on my first day, I got into a fistfight with a Calum. Yay. I was out to go to a bar, not to drink, but to say, hey, I've gone to an alien bar. Talk about a noble motivation. And it was also the bar which second floor I was going to move into. While I was too busy talking to someone, I bumped into the girl next to me. Her glass banged on the floor. Oh, I'm sorry. That was completely my fault. I'll buy you another drink. I turned around. Most of the time, the phrase, that was completely my fault, had this wonderful effect of making people not want to hit you. I looked and saw it was a Calum whose drink I spilled. My eyes went wide. I am so sorry. I will buy you rounds for the rest of the night. On me. Honest to God, I had no idea. I bowed profusely. She was about 6 feet-ish, so about average. She had short black hair and had the same features as an axe. With powerful arms and shoulders broad enough to block out the sun, she grabbed me by the sweater collar and flung me to the bar. Then she lifted me with an ease that made me feel incredibly emasculated. Or in other words, a typical Tuesday. Now, past Theseus would immediately make a comment about that person's intelligence. Present day, smart Theseus does not do that because he likes his teeth. You want to go? She said, while she somehow gritted her teeth simultaneously. No, you are much bigger and stronger than me, and I understand that without question. And if I were to fight you, I would pee my pants long before you would have thrown a punch, I said, with haste but still trying to enunciate, while I waved my hands in a surrendering fashion. Now, Theseus, I hear you cry, if you act like a total coward to people, won't they just continue to mess with you in the future? Well, yes, gentle reader, but that line isn't for people in your neighbour or whatnot. It's for strangers whom you will never see again. Now back to me airborne. She stared at me with those Calum eyes, the human inverse, white pupils that burned you like an eclipse with the rest all black. I felt the tingle down my spine that did a loop back to everywhere else. She dropped me. I landed with a small thud. I started to breathe again. An awkward silence clung to the air like a child on their parent's leg. You just gonna let him get away with that? A voice croaked from somewhere in that bar. She turned around with a fire in her eyes. Oh, my sweet Judas, I said, distracting her for a millisecond or two. I was never good at dodging punches, so much so that my fighting stance is just having my hands all the way up to my eyebrows, like a knight looking through the slits of his helmet. For even when I tried to slip punches, I would get hit anyways. She started her first punch, and I saw it. I didn't just see it. It was truly an awful punch. Even mine were better. It was so horribly telegraphed. Her arm was so far back, I would have had enough time to go on vacation before it would have hit me. Easily, I dodged. I'm going to write that again in italics for dramatic effect. Easily, I dodged. Never in my 18 years of life have those words ever, in that order, occurred in my life. She threw another awful hook. Again, I ducked underneath. She tried to jab me in the face. I slipped the punch. She again with a cross. Again, I slipped. It was so slow compared to my past bullies and even friendly sparring sessions with friends. As I dodged, I thought about all the tricks I had to pull as a kid. I learned to fight southpaw even though I was right-handed because it was less common, giving me just a slight advantage. I had a high guard because I knew my head movement was bad. The countless ways I tried to train myself to stop flinching when punches and kicks came at me. She punched the air for 30 seconds. Then I heard the familiar sound, a horrible gasp that one gets during a fight. One that, the more you try to hide, the louder it grows. It was coming from her. And I started to laugh, which was quite rude of me, I'll admit. But only 30 seconds? Even I could last a minute throwing non-stop punches and kicks to kill. My best friend can go 2 minutes with no rest, punching and kicking the whole time. She stopped punching and tucked into her guard. I rushed towards her and fainted high towards her head. She raised her hands higher and left her body wide open. I threw a cross to her body, aiming right for her solar plexus. She grunted. She wasn't even tensing her core, even though I was in range. I followed up my cross with an uppercut to her chin, which I could only reach because she was curled downwards from my cross. I went for another punch, but before I did, she hurled towards the ground. I caught her head before she banged it. "That's it!" I yelled, as the back of her head laid in my palm. I placed her down gently and made sure she was still breathing and whatnot. "I guess those stories of humans aren't exaggerated," a deep voice rumbled in the crowd. "I'll say," another squeaked. "What are you guys talking about?" I said. Thankfully, I stopped myself before I could say the truth. The bartender coughed. I glanced over and saw a framed photo of the woman I just fought. Around it, dozens of medals. I translated the bronze plaque below the picture. International Boxing Champion. Then her name, which I think I'll leave out of this story. "Seriously?" I stared. "Yeah, you're human?" He looked at me even more confused. I stopped to think about the implications. Oh dear God, think of the implications. I scratched my head. Huh, I guess I'm the shortest giant.